We're wrapping up the videotape now.
Oh, okay.
But we have more we want to talk to you about off camera.
Okay.
So you can edit that part out,
Yeah.
Patricia.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
How many minutes was that?
And let's see if we can get this in a 5-minute clip. Okay.
I'm really anxious to hear your story of coming here the first time and the history and your wanting to start Nepal Youth Foundation and how that happened.
Okay. Well, I came first in 1984, and I came, as most people come here, to trek. I love to travel and I love to hike, and I wanted to go into the mountains. And I came, I was almost 60 years old, and I had, I think subconsciously in the back of my mind, I knew one of these days I was going to have to retire. And what was I going to do with all this energy? I didn't want to sit around, play bridge with my friends and go shopping. That's not me. So I think that was way in the back of my mind somewhere. And I always knew that when I retired, I would work with children. I just loved being around children. They always made me happy. If I was at a party with 50 people and 2 kids, I'd be with the kids. But I thought what I would do would be either I would advocate for children in juvenile court who were in trouble in the U.S., or I would tutor in a community center, something of that sort. So I came here and I just fell in love with the country between the airport and my hotel. People were so, they seemed so cheerful, and I just liked the whole environment. And I went trekking into the mountains, and I saw children as poor as I'd ever seen in my life. And they were dirty, they were a lot more malnourished, and they had no, I don't think I saw a single toy. Not one single toy. The happiest kids I've ever seen. I mean, they were so filled with joy, and they made do with nothing, and they were just wonderful. And the thing they all wanted to do was go to school. Most children didn't go to school in 1984. And I was on top of a mountain one day, a small mountain, and there was a little hut there, and I went in, and there were 3 children sitting in a long, sort of crude board table by candlelight, studying, trying to study. They were going to school. And I was so moved by this, and I went back to my sleeping bag, and I just had this epiphany, like a balloon over my brain, like a cartoon, saying, okay, now I know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I'm going to educate Nepali children. I had no idea how. I was a lawyer in San Francisco, and I had, no experience with this kind of thing. So I went home, and it just seemed like a good idea. Came back in 1985, and somebody took me to an orphanage where there were 50 boys, little boys, all living in one room. And it looked like something out of Charles Dickens, but for Nepal it was great. It looked like something out of Charles Dickens. And the volunteer who was working there, I said, what happens to these boys when they get to be 16 and finish 10th grade and have to leave? They have no families. And family is everything in Nepal. No family, no future here. And he said, well, what happens is if they can go to college, and if they have sponsored, they can go to college. And I said, how many kids do you expect to leave this year? And he said, 5. And I said, how much does it cost to sponsor a kid in college? He said, $300 a year. I said, I'll take 5. So those are the first 5 scholarships we gave. And then I came back every year. And when people found out we were giving scholarships, they wanted so desperately to go to school. So they were putting all this pressure on us. And I had no more money. I couldn't sponsor anymore. And so I'd ask my friends, and our friends would see us coming, their eyes would roll back. Oh, here she comes with another hard luck story. So anyway, we had maybe, by 1989, 1990, we had maybe 50 kids all in college, mostly from this orphanage. And then I decided, well, we need to, if we're going to do this, we have to start our own foundation. So we formed the foundation. In June 1990 was my 85th birthday. June 1990. Last June was my 85th birthday, and the foundation's 20th birthday. So we had a big party.
Yay!
Yeah, June before last. It was so then we started, and then I mean the needs here are so great. You don't go out well, we don't go out and say, oh, I want to start a program for this and that. It develops organically. You see a need, and it's so intense, and you think, I can do something about this. This doesn't have to happen. And another program starts. So that's how we started the Indentured Daughters program. And we started our children's homes because we had a bunch of kids, combination of street kids, disabled kids, orphans in a boarding school. And it proved unsatisfactory for various reasons. And there was no other school that was willing to take kids like that. So we started our first children's home. That was for boys. Now we have one for girls as well. And we have a big program, very interesting program for malnourished children. That's where I'm going to take you. I should tell you about that. And the way that started is, there's one general children's hospital in the country. It's called County Hospital. And if a parent could actually have the bus fare to take a sick child there, and the hospital provided free food, sort of, but and free basic medication, aspirins and things like that. But if they needed something expensive, like a scan or an expensive antibiotic, they couldn't afford it, and the doctor would tell the father and mother, and the next day the kid would be pulled out and home they go. Couldn't afford. So we would go to Conti. We would say, is there anybody who needs anything that they can't afford in the way of medication? And we would do that. I mean, we did things like buying plates and screws for surgery for broken legs that the family couldn't afford. The surgery was free, but they couldn't afford the plates and screws. The doctor wrote out what he needed, and we went to a surgical store, bought all this metal stuff, and brought it to them. Anyway, so one day we were at Conti, and there was this little girl, and she was 5 years old, and she weighed 22 pounds, very malnourished. And she had a terrible, terrible lung infection, and it required an expensive antibiotic. So we paid for it, we left, and I went back a few days later. The bed is empty. So I said to the doctor, where's this child? He said, well, that antibiotic worked very well. We sent her home. I said, how could you send her home? She couldn't stand, she couldn't walk, she couldn't talk. She was so malnourished. He said, well, we need these beds. So many kids in Nepal are malnourished. We need these beds for seriously ill children. And that child went home and died. And within 6 months, I learned just personally 3 children like that. So I said, we have to do something about this. And so we started our first, we call it nutritional rehabilitation home, which was to take children whose acute illness was over from the hospital to, it actually is a little hospital. You'll see it later today. But it's only for malnourished children. They come with their mothers. You don't go to the hospital here by yourself. You have to go usually with your mother, but a caretaker. And this is especially true of the nutritional homes, because the idea is not just to build that child back to health, but to educate the mother, so this doesn't happen again, because a lot of this is more ignorance than poverty. So we started our first one, a 10-bed facility on top of a child's clinic in February 1998. And it is sensationally successful. We are building our 13th one. The government came to us and said, when they found out after a few years what we were doing, oh my God, this is fantastic, our results are incredible. Why don't you build these in different parts of the country? So there are 13 zones in Nepal, and each zone has a zonal hospital. And zonal hospital is a referring hospital. It takes from a wide area people. And so our aim was to build a hospital, one of these centers. It's like a little hospital, you'll see, on the grounds of every zonal hospital. And the magic of this is we don't use anything fancy, no fancy supplements, no vitamins, just what they can get in the village.
I remember that from the video.
And that makes it totally sustainable. I mean, just the ordinary food that they eat, but like first of all, each has an organic vegetable garden, so that the mothers are shown. They don't feed vegetables to little kids here. And if they do, they cook the hell out of them, because there's no nutritional value left. So they're taught how to grow, pick, clean, cook vegetables so that you know, they keep their nutritional value. And they're shown how to combine pulses and grains and various things that you
For
can get
complete
very
protein?
cheaply. Yes. We have a dietitian, we have a doctor, we have nurses, and we have had over 7,500 kids through this program now, and we've got a 93% success rate.
Excellent.
Wow.
It's
Excellent.
just well, you'll see, it's an amazing program. I mean, sometimes kids look as though they're going to topple up any minute when they come in, and it takes an average of 1 month, and $260 for 1 month of hospitalization. And the mothers train, and by the way, the mothers themselves are usually malnourished. They gain an average of 12 pounds when they're at the NRH because they're very often malnourished themselves.
So they stay with the child.
They stay with the child, and they are late all day long. They learn about how to take care of the child, and it isn't just nutrition. It's mainly that, but it's family planning, and it's hygiene, and it's noticing the symptoms of illness, and whatever she needs to take care of her child. And then she's trained to train other mothers.
That's what I was just going to ask you.
can-
Can she go back to her village
She's
and then
trained
share
to
all
train
that?
other mothers. And then we have outreach workers, and they go and they walk all over the country to the villages where these children have been discharged. And they check on the children. They go 3 times after the child is discharged. They check to see the child is okay. They also ask in the village, it's like a test, an exam. Has this mother told you what she learned? And so it's very, very successful. And so we build these things, and then we thought, how long can we run this for? Because nobody wants a program where you're into it forever. The idea is to make it sustainable, like we have the Indentured Daughters program. So we went to the government, and they're so enthusiastic about what we were doing that we made an agreement with the local hospital. We signed an agreement. We'll build it. We'll train the employees. We'll hire the employees, train them. We'll buy everything for it. We'll pay all the costs for 3 years. 4th year, we pay 75%. We pay 25%. 5th year, 50-50. 6th year, use zonal hospital to take it over. And but the zonal hospital, the hospitals here are very poor. So they signed the agreement, but everybody said, yeah, the Nepal government, don't ever do it. So, but we lobbied the Ministry of Health here, and when they saw the results, they said, we will provide the money for these zonal hospitals to take them over. So we have already turned over 5. And they have the same budget we have. They're running it the same way we have. We monitor and evaluate, but the government has full responsibility now. So that's really a triumph here.
Yes. Thank you.
So far, so good.
Great. Thank you so much for that.
Welcome.